Welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where we interview entertainment pros about their careers and how they became successful in the industry. The secrets to their success here every week. Here's your host, Sean Ventura.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I'm your host, Sean Ventura, and I just want to say go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review. We have a very special guest today. It's Tia Fabey from Geek Vibes Nation. She's the head writer and the content manager for Geek Vibes Nation, and we did a review of Ratched, and we decided to do some more reviews. So today we are reviewing Hubie Halloween, the Halloween movie by Adam Sandler on Netflix. Okay, here we go. It's going to be fun. Hey everybody, this is Sean Ventura with the Lights Camera Pro podcast, and a very special guest today. It is Tia. Is it Fabey or Fabi?
It's Fabey.
Fabey. Okay, I wanted to get it right. I always get names wrong. Tia Fabey. She is the head writer and the content manager at GVN, and we have collaborated a couple of times, and we had so much fun doing a review of the movie Ratched, the series Ratched, on Netflix, that we decided to do Hubie Halloween today. And I'm just going to put up the poster with Adam Sandler and Kevin James and Julie Bowen and Ray Liotta and Maya Rudolph. It goes on and on. Steve Buscemi. There's so many stars in this. But it is... we are going to have spoilers. So if you are not into spoilers... Tia watched it yesterday. We're going to talk about it. And I just want to say, because we were talking offline a little bit, and you can jump in anytime you want, Tia, but I just want to say that this is an Adam Sandler movie. This is a goofy Adam Sandler movie in the same vein as Happy Gilmore and, the Water Boy. He even has a stupid accent like the Water Boy. My girlfriend was like, I can't even understand what he's saying, but there's lots of innuendos.
I always have subtitles on when I watch things, and thank God I did, and I didn't expect that he was going to have some silly voice in this. I was like, what is he doing? I mean, and I hate to cut you off, but I think, as you said beforehand, it's like, I can't believe that he's still doing these sort of roles. Like, I am not trying to be ageist at all, but it's like, Adam, you're not a young man. Like, why are you doing
he's in his like
role?
50s, and so Rob Schneider and Ray Liotta look really old. Oh my God, they look super, super old. But I think it's just a goofy, stupid movie. Like, literally, I was going through Netflix and I was like, okay, there's nothing on. Here's an Adam Sandler movie. I'm just going to play it. It's about Halloween, whatever. And it's like, oh, I grew up in Massachusetts. I know Salem. This is just mindless fun. And I've seen these critics just rip this movie apart and say it's awful and it's the worst Adam Sandler movie ever and 10 times worse than Grown Ups 2 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, come on, guys.
They are definitely hating because it's in the moment, because I'm sorry, there is seldom few projects that are as bad as Grown Ups 2.
I don't even remember watching the whole thing. I think I turned it off after 10 minutes. But this is just a fun movie. So I'm just going to say to you, Tia, how did you feel about, and I'm going to put you full screen here for a second. How did you feel about the movie in general before we break it down?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where the exciting part about Adam Sandler films is that they're always, say, like a reunion. Adam, like, listen, I wish I was a friend of Adam Sandler, because you know that you're always going to work. He's always going to have you in his movies. So as soon as I saw Kevin James, Steve Buscemi, I was like, oh, look, there. So, I mean, I don't think Hubie Halloween was in any way like harmful. It wasn't, say, unbearable. I am, dragging it a little here, but it was fine. There were some parts in, say, the middle of the movie that lulled a bit for me.
Yeah.
I felt like it could have been sped up, but I will say that it had a pretty decent ending. It kind of gave that little message, and I thought that was interesting. So, I mean, it was a Halloween movie to put on if you're bored and you want to be within the season of October, but you don't know what else to watch, and you're like, let me throw this on. It was it was fine. It was a fine movie, and as I said before, in no way worse than Grown Ups 2.
In no way worse than Grown Ups 2. I love that. I don't even remember watching Grown Ups 2.
And I have to say as well that I used to be, not that I dislike Adam Sandler per se, but I used to be a huge Adam Sandler fan. I mean, Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison.
Mm-hmm.
I loved even I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. That was a fun movie. That was a fun movie. So it's not like I've ever truly say dislike Adam Sandler. Oh my God, The Wedding Singer. I'm like thinking now of all his good movies,
mm-hmm.
but as soon as he did say like Jack and Jill and Grown Ups 2, then I suddenly was like, you're just doing this for a cash grab, which, I mean, listen, in today's economy, I'm not going to hate on anyone for doing cash grabs, but I wasn't interested necessarily in watching them.
All right. Well, we're done. That's it. We're just going to wrap it up. We've talked about the movie. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's like, okay, it was a mediocre movie. Let's all go home. Have a good day. All right. So I'm going to start with saying that his name is Hubie Boucher, which I think in the Waterboy movie.
I thought it was Hubie. No, it was Hubert Sherbert because I wrote that as a note.
Is it Hubert Sherbert?
No, it was Hubert Sherbert Dubois. His last name.
Dubois. You're right. I'm mixing it up with Waterboy. Boucher was Waterboy.
Because it already is such like a touchstone of a former Adam Sandler classic.
Right. I mean, the accent, you could barely understand what he was saying. It was really silly. But he's a delicatessen worker, works in Salem, Massachusetts. And if you, here, we'll just put up another poster here, or we'll put up him being chased by the local kids, which is ridiculous because at one point they throw bags of poop on fire at him, but you can see in this picture that they're all wearing Scream masks, and it's like, really, these kids are going to pick on a 50-year-old man, but it's silly. It's fun. So he works in this deli and they play pranks on him. They throw stuff at him when he's in the bathroom and they make the sheep's head talk, and he's a screamer. He's a big screamer. So he's constantly screaming and freaking out, and everybody's playing excitable. Everybody's playing jokes on him. He has a new neighbor, it turns out, when he gets home, and it's Steve Buscemi, and Steve Buscemi's the next door neighbor. And he's like, listen, tomorrow night on Halloween, just don't come to my house. It's going to be all boarded up. If you hear screams, don't come by. It's like, okay. I mean, I love Steve Buscemi, but what is this character? I mean, did you think that he was going to be like, I mean, we have spoilers here. So a werewolf or some sort of monster, or did you think something else?
I mean, considering like the context of the movie, that's like a Halloween movie, and him saying, don't come to my house no matter what you hear, I knew that kind of something was going on. I mean, if you remember the beginning of the movie, which, by the way, was Ben Stiller reprising his role from Happy Gilmore? Remember, in Happy Gilmore, Ben Stiller plays the orderly.
Yes.
And I felt like that was such a nod to that.
It was. And what you're talking about is there's a mental institution, and he goes in to give food to this patient, and then the patient escapes, and it's like a mental patient escapes from. So there's a couple things going on. You've got the Steve Buscemi sort of mysterious neighbor. You've got the guy escaping from the mental institution, which we'll find out who he is later. But it's like all this spooky stuff is happening in Salem. I so thought that like Steve Buscemi was that guy, right? That's what I thought. Yeah, we thought he was the guy who escaped, right? Yeah, but I love Steve Buscemi. Can I say that he doesn't get enough love, and people often kind of make fun of him for say his like appearances, and I'm like, he is a solid actor. I just think he's great. But of course, when he premieres in these Happy Madison productions, it's always as like the creep, right? What was the movie? I think Billy Madison, where it's like, he's the guy who's like putting on lipstick and crossing out people's names. So it's like you automatically, when you see Steve Buscemi, you're like, okay, something's going on here. But did I know necessarily that he was going to say be a werewolf? No, but definitely something was happening. Yeah, something was definitely up. Okay,
Right.
so Hubie lives with his mom, and we're going to go through the plot here a little bit as we review it and talk about it. He lives with his mom, and he goes home, and she's making him peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with the crust cut off. And she says to him that he keeps getting bullied by kids and adults, and he's got to stick up for himself. And it's totally ridiculous because Sandler's like 50 years old, but whatever, it's stupid. But it comes back later why she keeps telling him that he's got to stick up for himself against these bullies. He's just never going to do that. So do you have anything to say about the mom or the mental patient? That they
First of all, I just thought that the mom was like, say, really precious. I mean, it just sounded so like what a mother would say, obviously to a younger child, like, hey, you got to stick up for yourself.
Right, to like a teenager, right.
Teenager, not, a fully grown adult. But I just have to say that I really liked her. And as far as I said, like with the mental patient, I thought that was Steve Buscemi's character. I did want to mention really quick, I don't know if we're getting to it, but what is up with that thermos?
Okay, yeah, I totally glossed over the thermos. The thermos is totally ridiculous. At one point, he goes up into a tree and avoids a car. He obviously uses water at one point. It's just like a Swiss Army knife of thermoses with a million things in there, like a radio.
And he always has soup in it. And the thing is,
like 3 kinds of soup, which is even more bizarre.
And the thing with like Adam Sandler movies is like they're bizarre enough, and then he always adds like this little thing, like, okay, you have this, like the thermos in this movie, and then in what was it, Mr. Deeds, he has like the foot and everything.
Right,
and it's like,
right, the weird club
in this,
foot,
like, little
right.
thing. It's like, Adam, why do you need these things? Like, why do you need to put these little things
Honestly, I think he literally he makes like a movie a year. He's like Woody Allen. He's making a movie every year, and he just sits around a table with 20 writers that get paid a lot of money. He's like, all right, each of you have to come up with 2 gags.
Yeah.
5 for me, 5 for Steve Buscemi, 5 for the Ray Liotta, and 5 for Shaq. Like I think that's just what they do. And then they just throw them into the script because it's like every 2 minutes, there's another gag, whether it's innuendo or a sight gag or whatever. So Hubie goes to a local Halloween party. Mm-hmm. Where he starts pouring out these kids beers and they're getting really upset with him. So some of the kids decide they're going to tell him that, and he's got his Halloween monitor sash on, like he's keeping the kids safe, and he's more annoying than anything else to these teenagers who just want to party. But they tell him that there's a little kid lost in the corn maze. There's a corn maze out behind the party at the high school or wherever it is. And so he goes into the corn maze, and then Mike from work, one of the kids who plays jokes on him, decides he's going to scare him. And then Noah Schnapp from Stranger Things, which I'll bring up a picture here. Noah Schnapp and the other actress's name is Paris. They're here with Adam Sandler in the cornfields, like a behind the scenes shot. He goes out to the cornfield with the somewhat girlfriend to find Hubie and tell him, hey man, this is a joke. They're all playing a joke on you. Nobody's out in the cornfield. But then they find Mike, and we see what happens with Mike. And do you want to talk about that, Tia? What happens with Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it was, first of all, I have to say, like with Noah Schnapp's character, I'm glad that they didn't make, say, like him kind of a little bit of a douche. I don't know if I can say that on here. But I'm glad that they kind of made it like really quickly where he was like, this guy is a guy that my mom went to like, school with, and clearly he's a little, say, off, but, really doesn't mean any sort of harm. And you have I guess if she's a senior or something like that, or maybe, I don't know, she's definitely a grade above like Noah Schnapp's character, and her, sitting there going, okay, let's go help this guy that everyone in the town knows. Right. And then you have and I'm sorry, what was the kid's name again? The one who dressed up like Freddie Mercury?
His name is Mike, and he works at the deli. Yeah. I
was surprised of how much of like a douche he was to because he works with Hubie. And it's like, I understand like pulling small pranks at first. In my mind, I was just sitting there going, oh, that's kind of what coworkers do sometimes, right? You pull little pranks, especially if it's like Halloween. But I mean, he kind of was really being nasty to Hubie. And it's like, does that satisfy you as a teen to make fun of this adult? But then we see that now he's the one who's actually in trouble. He's pretty much crying wolf at this point. And he's really in trouble. So I thought that was interesting. And also I was at that point saying, good, you should get that. Now, granted, it's a Netflix Halloween movie, so I didn't know how far they were going to take it. Like, were they actually going to kill anyone in this movie? Was always kind of like, is the movie going to cross that line? And we see later that it doesn't cross that line, but it very well could have. I didn't know what direction it was going in at that point.
Yeah. So we should just say that Hubie comes along Mike, the friend from the coworker, and he gets pulled into the corn maze really quickly, like as if a ghost or someone's pulling him like 100 yards in a second. So that's kind of spooky and scary. So yeah, we didn't really know where that was going to go. But Julie Bowen, who I'm going to bring up now, a picture of her, she is the love interest in the movie, and she is married to Kevin James, who is the sheriff. And I'm going to
was married
to him. They're divorced. Kevin James looks like a Muppet, and I think at one point people call him a Muppet because he's obviously bald and he's got some sort of wig on and he's got this big beard and he looks ridiculous and he's the bumbling sheriff. But he is the ex-husband of Julie Bowen, and Julie, her name is something like Violet Valentine. And
Violet Valentine, yeah.
And Hubie's always nice to her, but he never thinks he has any chance with her. So he's just kind of nice to her.
Clearly like into him like that. I was surprised of how, I'm not going to say they made her desperate, but they certainly made her not, she wasn't subtle. She was not subtle at all about how much she obviously had a crush on Hubie. And it was kind of neat seeing them together because I keep going to Happy Gilmore, but it's probably one of my favorite Adam Sandler movies. And obviously we had a reunion because she was along with Tracy as well there. So, but yeah, she was not subtle at all, which you have to think like, how does she end up with a major tool like Kevin James' character? And he was a tool, which I mean, he did well.
The only way I thought about it that it could actually be, I mean, obviously none of this is real, but you do think about these things like how could she possibly go out with Hubie because he can't even speak. But it's because both of them were in. She's like, I have all these kids and he's not going to want me. And he's like, oh, I talk funny and everybody makes fun of me. So she's not going to.
I want to see you try and imitate like the face.
The face of Hubie?
Yeah. He's like,
oh, I can't even.
You should have worn a fake mustache for this.
It's like he's not. You can't. You need the subtitles. I'm going to do that next time because we can't understand what he's saying. Like, oh, your kids, get out of there.
You need a translator at that point.
Yeah, you totally need a translator, like someone. Well, not with sign language, but you definitely need the subtitles. So, okay. So 5 seconds, like it's so fast. 5 seconds later, all of a sudden, after the corn maze is resolved, Hubie's at the drive-in. And this is just like you said, the lull here, this really weird scene. I'm going to bring up a picture of Maya Rudolph and Tim Meadows from Saturday Night Live. And he's got this weird costume where his head is in his hands and his head's cut off. And she's the bride of Frankenstein. But they're in a car and they're making fun of Hubie, who's sort of, patrolling the parking lot of the drive-in with the scary movie. And then all of a sudden they decide to play a prank on him saying that some kid is in the car and he needs help. And it's did you think it was like the movie Christine where the car started driving after him, but no one was in it?
I actually didn't make that connection, but it
Okay.
is. But certainly, once the lights turned on, I was like, "Oh, where is this going?"
Where's
It's
the
same.
driver? Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? The main thing I thought. First of all, I really liked Maya Rudolph's costume, but Tim Meadows, as you said, his costume was very strange. That
Yeah.
toupee, especially, was very frightening there. But
Yeah.
it just kind of reminds those things like I don't live in a small town, right? So it's hard to imagine that like you have these adults. Like it's one thing like the kids with these adults who are still like acting this way years after say high school, and they all still live in the same town, so they all grew up and they all know it, and then they're all still kind of making fun. And it's like something that I've always say disconnected in movies because I don't live in a small town. That's
Right.
not how I live at all. But I was just kind of like, you got like I get the kids, but you guys are adults, like you and Ray Liotta. I mean, what is you didn't grow out of that?
Yeah, I think it's just literally they're like a caricature of themselves. They're a cartoon of themselves. They're just a vehicle to move him to the next scene and to keep having people root for Hubie. You know, but it is very bizarre that everybody's really mean to Hubie, and it's a fine line of almost too mean. It's like, okay, this is a comedy, guys. Remember, this is like a little bit too mean. So they end up at this haunted house with Ray Liotta, and I don't have a picture of him, but I do have a picture of the poster, which I think he's on. Let's see. Yeah, he's in the clown wig in the poster there. And this is a really creepy scene. Like he's hitting on a 20-year-old girl. The guy's like 60 or 70. And even the girl says to him in the movie, like, what are you doing? You really think you're going to go out with me? And he's like, oh, darn it. And then Hubie
and I'm sorry to interrupt, but then he gets very like vindictive, like, oh, well, I struck out on you, so I'm going to take it out on him. Like, spoken like a true creep.
Yeah, like a true jerk. It's like, hey, Ray, welcome back to the movies. You haven't been anything in 20 years. You're the creepy child hitting on a young girl, like a 20-year-old girl. But so Hubie's screaming through this whole movie, right? We haven't really gotten into that. People are scaring him all the time because he's easily scared. And this is happening in the haunted house. He's being scared by people, and they're like, we're just doing this to raise money. We don't mean to scare you. It was pretty funny scene. And then he ends up in a room with everyone, like Ray Liotta and the sheriff, and they find the mental patient, who's actually Rob Schneider from SNL and the Grown Up movies and Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, and Steve Buscemi are at the police station, so they couldn't have abducted the last person who was abducted. So now they're all thinking it's Hubie, and Hubie's like, uh-oh, I got to get out of here. And he runs over to the radio station. And do you want to talk about what happens at the radio station? Well, which is one of the funner scenes for me.
Well, so I was going to say, before I think we started this, you asked me, you said, Tia, did you hate this movie? And it's like, no, I didn't hate it. And because there were genuinely funny scenes, like I thought it was hilarious when Keenan, played by Keenan, one of the other officers, calls and says like, yeah, I've had these guys here for like 45 minutes. They're just mental patients. One thinks that he's a werewolf and the other just pisses himself all the time. And I don't know, to me that was like genuinely funny, but to me the highlight was him going to the radio station, because the whole time you hear this, you assume it's a woman, Aurora, and she has this very sultry voice, very great to listen to, and it's Shaq. I couldn't. I was like, that's funny. I'm gonna give that to them. That's hilarious. I couldn't help myself, and Shaq played it really well. Like Hubie's obviously shocked and astonished, and I felt like they made it funny without, say, like, gagging it up and going too much. I thought it was hilarious to me. But to me, then the real hilarious moment was when Aurora, I guess we'll keep calling Shaq, I believe that's what they said in the subtitles, but Aurora's girlfriend, wife, I'm not sure what he was, comes in and she's like, "Hey, baby."
Yeah, and she's got the manly voice. He's got the woman's voice.
And then Hubie's like, "I can't wait to hear your real voice." And she's like, "This is my real voice. What are you talking about?" And I was just like, "Oh my!" And then they have that scene where they make out with a sandwich.
Oh, it's like, I have to say this. It's like 101 Dalmatians and they eat the sandwich until they kiss. And it's so disgustingly funny. It's really funny, but it's disgusting.
It was funny. And I don't know if you ever watched the cartoon series called Ventura Brothers or Venture Brothers.
Venture Brothers, yeah.
Yeah. That woman sounded like a character on the show. They had like another like female character who had a very deep, raspy voice like that. So I was like wondering if that was the same actress, but I didn't look it up. I should have beforehand. But yeah, to me that was the peak of this movie. That was the funniest.
It was the funniest scene for me too, for sure.
And I didn't know Shaq was going to be in this. And he's a very amusing guy. He's very personable. So anytime he's in anything, it's like a treat pretty much.
Yeah, he's really funny in everything that he does. He's a jokester. So the second to last scene in the movie, we're at the radio station and there's a phone call coming from within Hubie's house. So Hubie thinks the killer is in his house and it's going to kidnap and kill his mom. So he goes running home, riding his bike super fast home, and he runs into the house and his mom isn't there and he's scared, and he goes into the backyard. And what happens in the backyard? You can talk about that scene.
Oh yeah, that became suddenly like sadistic because the whole thing had a bit of still an amusement to it the whole time, despite certain other things happening. But as soon as you walk in, first of all, as soon as he was like, "Mom," and ran home, and I was like, "Oh my God, Mom!" And then as soon as at first, there was one moment where it split, like right before he got in, where I was like, "It's the mom," and and then she says to him, "I always told you that you should stand up for yourself, but clearly you aren't. So it's my turn." And you go, and it's like all these makeshift like crosses and things. Obviously,
yeah, because they used to burn witches in Salem.
Right. And I think they said that their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was someone who was convicted of being a witch. So to me, I was like, and again, it touches upon that where I said to myself, is this movie going to actually cross a line like that?
Right. And burn people alive.
And not for nothing, I have to say, I was this is going to sound bad. Anyone who is live listening, I guess, or listening afterwards, I kind of rooted for her to do it because they were all being still such jerks.
Yeah.
It was like still like, and she even said like the one kid, Mike, called him Hubie. And she's like, even right now, like you can't help yourself to be this way. And, that point then once Hubie saves them and she gives them that stern talking to, they all kind of reveal of their own insecurities. And like, not to get like too serious or anything, but I was kind of picked on when I was a kid. And my mom, like the one thing she said, she was like, there's some sort of jealousy there. And you think to yourself like, well, they're picking on me. What are they jealous of? And it's like, well, they have their own insecurities and Hubie doesn't clearly have. Like, yes, he has a funny way of talking and he still lives with his mom at the age of 50 and, all this, but he's very kind to people. He's very helpful. And, they clearly don't have that in their lives.
Well, yeah, and it's really interesting because Adam Sandler has this way about him. Like, I don't think anybody else could play that part because as stupid as this movie was and all the dumb jokes and all the innuendos and the goofiness, like in that moment, you're kind of like, oh my God, are they going to burn the people? And you're like, you're kind of in it and you're like, oh my God, are they going to turn this from like a goofy movie into a really sick movie? Like at the end, is this possible? And he kind of draws you in and gets you to be involved in the story, even though it's a stupid, silly story. So yeah, anybody who's picking on, sorry?
I was going to say that's exactly how I felt, where it's like it's a silly movie the whole time, and then suddenly it's like has this amazing message where you're so enwrapped in it. And like I really was, again, like I know it sounds bad, but I was really on like the mom's side at some point. I was like, you know what? Burn them.
Yeah, burn them all. Burn everybody, these bastards. Because but I had experiences with bullies in schools and saw other people bullied, and I think that's the message, and it's kind of a good message that, you know, the people who are bullying have their own pain and their own problems, and not to excuse it at all, but they're you know, as messed up as you are. But then Hubie doesn't, you know, fight back, and he uses his thermos at the very end to save everybody from the mother's match. He's about to light everybody on fire, and he squirts it out with his thermos, which is funny. But
which so wouldn't happen.
Right, it could never happen. Only in a movie. But the very last scene, now it's a year later, it's Halloween. Hubie's the hero. He's much cooler. He rides his bike, and the kids aren't throwing stuff at him anymore. They're saluting him. He gets home to start Halloween night, and he's with Violet, Julie Bowen's character, and her 3 kids. He's kind of the dad now, and they're all dressed up. One of them's dressed up as the sheriff, and one of them's dressed up as Ray Liotta or something. I can't remember exactly, but they're all dressed up as different characters.
One is dressed up as Steve Buscemi.
With the werewolf. So, I mean, that's fun. That's a fun little ending. And then, you know, and then it's over.
Yeah.
So, let's do a rating, because we always do this. I'll let you go first. What would you give it 1 out of 10?
I would give it a 5. I never like being too harsh with my ratings. You know, I'm sure that there are people who, as you said, it kind of got slammed by critics, and you know, if you really wanted, you could probably give it a lower rating. But I mean, there were some funny scenes. It had a nice little message at some point. It kind of wrapped up in a little bow. So it's certainly like even in the past like few weeks, I've watched much worse movies than this. So, you know, it's an Adam Sandler movie. Besides, as I said before the show, besides like uncut gems, this is what you're getting from Adam Sandler lately. So if you're expecting anything else, then clearly you haven't watched an Adam Sandler movie in a while.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I said too. I said 7 out of 10 because you just have to know when you watch it. It says Adam Sandler. He's in a goofy bicycle. Like, you cannot come into this movie like it's up for an Academy Award. This is a jokey, one-off, mindless movie, and that's why I give it a 7 instead of a 5 or a 4 because I did laugh out loud a bunch of times. I mean, it was goofy and funny. But I'm just curious because Happy Gilmore, which is probably his best movie because it was kind of like one of the first ones and you'd never really seen him do a movie. I think maybe he did one other movie before that, but what would you rate Happy Gilmore since that was a successful Adam Sandler movie?
Oh yeah, Happy Gilmore to me would definitely be say like either a 7 or an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Now, while Happy Gilmore probably is like the one of his best, I would say personally my favorite is The Wedding Singer. Like if you ask me to rate, say, The Wedding Singer, that'd be a 9 out of 10. That is so much fun. I love that every time it comes on. To me, it's like a classic. And it's like at that point, Adam had his like charm when it came to those silly roles.
And do you think that was partially because of Drew Barrymore? Because I love her also.
I think it was, well, first of all, I love, like, I may have been born in 1990, but I love anything the 80s. So the fact that it takes place in the 80s and everyone has the wild hair. And I think I just like the storyline. Yeah, Drew Barrymore was in her, like, real, you know, where she was, like, really, you know, sweet and cute. And she was playing, like, this very, like, role where I don't know where I'm going really with that, but she was good in that role. And then the guy who played a douche in that was just so fantastic as a douche.
Yeah. Good villain.
What would you say is your favorite Adam Sandler movie?
I would have to say This is going to sound really weird, but there was this movie Blended, and it was with Drew Barrymore, and it's about two step families. Basically, she has two kids, he has three kids, and they can't do. Like, she can't do the dad part and he can't do the mom part at all. Like, his girls they all have box cuts. He actually has one of his daughter's names is Espin, like ESPN. and the mom was a Hooters waitress and she died of cancer. So he takes Drew Barrymore on her first date to Hooters. And she's like, what is this? Why our first date? But they end up, because Drew Barrymore's friend was dating the guy who ran Home Depot. Long story, they both end up in Africa on this free cruise, and their two families hang out together and they become like, they fall in love and this whole thing. But I've been divorced and had that type of situation before. And so I kind of related to it, and I thought they both did a great job, and it was a fun script. So I would say Blended is my favorite movie of his. But it's only because I relate to that so well with, having, dating someone who has kids or whatever, stuff like that. So, but Happy Gilmore was great. Wedding Singer was great. He has so many great movies.
Billy Madison, as we talked about, and Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. I actually also 50 First Dates with your girl. Very more again in it. I liked Click, I forget which one. That actually makes me cry, believe it or not. There are several scenes.
No, that was a good movie too. And then he actually did with James Brooks, who created The Simpsons and Broadcast News and won all these Academy Awards. Spanglish. He was in a movie called Spanglish, and it was kind of a serious movie, but it was this famous Spanish actress who was kind of like the nanny housekeeper kind of thing. And he falls in love with her. And it was a really good, something was up for an Academy Award with that movie, like the script or something.
When that movie came out, it was definitely like the talk of the town pretty much. I think with Adam Sandler, and I wanted to make this point earlier with seeing Rob Schneider in it, is that I think that Adam and Rob got into a lot of trouble at some point, with their portrayals of, certain people in a very negative light. I mean, Rob Schneider has pretty much portrayed every race that he has no.
Yeah, he has. You're right.
So I was very shocked to see him. I was like, I thought Rob Schneider was person non grata. And then he pops up and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, we thought he was out of the picture. But this is a stupid story and we'll just end it on this. I know that when they did Grown Ups, the movie Grown Ups, he bought all of Chris Rock and Schneider and all the main guys, Kevin James in the movie, that were his buddies that were in the movie. When the movie launched, it made tons of money or whatever, and he bought them each a Lamborghini and delivered it to their driveway because he was like, "Thanks, guys, we just made a ton of money, and I'm going to share it with you." Because he's obviously the executive producer of all these movies.
To get a friend like that, Grown Ups one was good. Grown Ups one was really good. Yeah,
it was pretty funny. All right, so that was fun. I mean, we just needed some levity, right? We needed to do a comedy because we've been doing these dark things, and who knows what we're going to do next time. But next time you pick, and we'll do it from you'll be the podcast host, and we'll figure all that out. But everybody, I hope you enjoyed this, and I did. And Tia, thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, well, thank you, Sean. I've always now enjoyed these pods with you, and I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, we have to do that one. We have to do one of those top 10s, too, with your friend.
Yes, absolutely. We do the top 10s on Sunday, me and my friend Brittany, who's a very talented Twitch streamer. So make sure you check that out. But definitely we'll have to figure out a one where you can come on and we can just kind of just have a lot of fun with it.
Right. And do you want to say you're from Geek Vibes Nation. Do you want to say anything about when your pods are on, or are they scheduled, or what do you want to say before we go?
Oh yeah. Well, again, the top 10 is we record every Sunday, but usually it goes out on Mondays. And we do try and post reviews when we can. And we have other affiliates such as They Call This a Movie, Gutting the Sacred Cow, your Lights Camera Pro, which is just, we love having this community of podcasts that get released every week, because who doesn't like good content?
Right. And you guys, it's very impressive. You guys do you interview a lot of bigger stars, people who are in the Batman movies or the Marvel universe, or even some of the other TV shows that are on right now.
I'll tell you first of all, right now as we speak, one of our associates, Ben, is doing an interview with Kyle Lauder. One of you just did an interview with Scott Adkins. So
Right.
you check that out. And I don't want to jinx it, but I am trying to get an interview with a pretty big actor right now. We're going back and forth, and their agent is seeing if they are available. And I'll give a little hint that he is in an upcoming James Gunn movie. So I'm pretty...
Okay. Very, very cool. All right, Tia, this is awesome. Always fun. And I will see you next time. We will see everyone out there next time. Thanks for stopping by.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where entertainment pros talk about how they made their dream into a career.
Go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks to Bob Juergens for the Rockin' VO and Joseph McDade for the music. Next week, we have special guest Amy Holler. She's an actor who has worked with Burt Reynolds, and she has a lot of stories. It's going to be really fun. Check it out next week.